Welcome to this week's deep dive webinar series where we cover some of the features in QuickBooks Enterprise. So I'm going to be your host. My name is Kat Broskovics and I'm a partner here at Fourlane. We're going to be going through the QuickBooks Advanced Reporting feature in QuickBooks Enterprise today. So let me get to our agenda. So we're going to be talking about what QuickBooks Advanced Reporting is. You may hear me refer to it also as the acronym QBAR, so that's what I mean when I say that. So we're going to go through navigating the QBAR interface. We're going to talk a little bit about building a custom report, and then I'm going to let y'all know best practices and troubleshooting tips, and then we're going to discuss some upcoming webinars that we have for you. So let me go ahead and flip over to QuickBooks. All right, so for the purposes of this webinar, I just have a sample company file open, so the dates, names, all that stuff is maybe going to look a little bit weird, but QBAR was added to QuickBooks Enterprise in 2018, so it's definitely been around for some time. Some of the key benefits and capabilities, so in QuickBooks, you know, when you're using some of the custom reporting here, even if we're building a custom report or we're using one of the standard like canned reports, we can't do things like add in, you know, calculation fields, filter sometimes on multiple drop downs, right? So multiple like custom field values, let's just say. And maybe we just want to, you know, look at a different way to view the report. Like we want to have, you know, our account list down the right side, our custom field values across the top. So some things like that. So if you think about any reports that you run in QuickBooks and then you export to Excel and you do some modifications there, that might be an example of a report that you'd want to look at building in QBAR to save yourself some time. So in one of the things to note is that in the QuickBooks Advanced Reporting feature, budgets and forecasts are not something that you can use. So those are reports that have to be set up and used in QuickBooks Enterprise. You also don't have the capability to do double-click drill down. So if I run a profit and loss in QuickBooks Enterprise, you know, I can double-click and drill down and look at you know, something that's in that report, right? Like this, I can see whatever makes up that value. You also cannot run this on multiple company files. So I can't, you know, tell QBAR, hey, I want to pull data from these 3 files like you can when you're using this combined reports from multiple companies. I think I went through that in another webinar a little bit earlier this year, and then also talked in depth about some of the ways that you can customize these reports and build custom reports from scratch. So if you haven't seen those, I would definitely check those out. When we talk about, you know, some of the ways that we've used QBAR, definitely commissions are one of the biggest things that we've had requests on. I feel like everybody calculates commissions a different way, different percentages. Sales reps have different percentages, maybe items get different percentages. So that's definitely something that, that we could use QBAR for. And then also a lot of reporting around, you know, custom fields and that kind of thing as well. So we're going to go ahead and get into it here. So I'm going to come up to reports and I am going to go to advanced reporting right here. One of the things I do want to know actually before I jump in there is we do have to make sure that we are in multi-user mode. So if you try to go into it without being in that mode, it is going to prompt you to do that. And then also if I go to set up users and roles here, we also want to make sure that whoever it is has access to that. So I'm just going to say if we had somebody in the accounts receivable role, we're going to come over here to file, and we would want to make sure that this QuickBooks Advanced Reporting little bubble is filled in for them as well. All right, so now we're going to get into advanced reporting. So I'm going to click on advanced reporting from that reports drop-down menu, and it's going to load this page. Now I've already ran the sync. The first time that you use QuickBooks Advanced Reporting, depending on the size of your company file, it could take that sync a while to run. Once you run that sync, then subsequent times you might run it, it's going to go a lot faster because it's just picking up the changes. So it's basically pulling all of the data from QuickBooks into the QuickBooks Advanced Reporting piece. So then you can filter and run all your reports there. And so anytime you go to run it, if you want to see up-to-date information, you would want to say update now. One of the things to also note is that, of course, if you're looking at QuickBooks Advanced Report and then you're flipping back over to QuickBooks to make some modifications, you'd want to click that update now as well. So usually if I am working through QBAR with a client, I will, we'll do some report review in QuickBooks first, just to make sure that we have clean data or not having to flip back and forth between the two. So this is a little welcome center that tells you a little bit about it. There's also some links to some videos and that kind of stuff in there as well, in case you want to find more out than we're going to be able or have time to go through today. But I'm going to go ahead and click on our report list. And right here, I can see that I have a list of the starter reports. So up here in my drop down, I can click on starter reports. They all have, it might be a little hard to see, but they all have an S and like a green box next to them. So these are reports that come with QBAR out of the box. So you can also see that we can filter by industry. So if I wanted to say, I want to see all my manufacturing and wholesale reports, you're going to see a lot of reports related to, inventory and that kind of thing. Versus if I go to my contractor reports, I'm going to see more, estimates versus actuals and the kind of things that we would expect contractors to be running. I'm going to go ahead and click close here. And so just like whenever we're building a report in QuickBooks, we try to start with one that is most like the one that I'm trying to get to. Now, you may have to completely start from scratch, and you definitely can do that. But if you have one in here, like if I wanted to run a report on the customer list, which is something I'm going to be going through today, then we'd want to start with this report and then modify and add maybe some other fields or calculation columns to it, just so that we don't have to start completely from scratch. But again, you do have the opportunity to do that if that is what you need, and none of these are really getting you where you want to go. Let's see here. So I'm going to go ahead and show how we would modify a custom or one of these advanced reports. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this one. You can double click it or open it. And because I'm going to be making some changes to it, I'm going to go ahead and save it. I'm just going to call it cat. All right. And so that's saving our report. And we're going to look at a couple of the things that we already have in this report. So over here, you can see we have some different filters. So these are, values that are displayed in the columns of my report. If I scroll across here, so I can see I have city. So kind of like what I was talking about before, where it gives you the capability to filter multiple values right on the same field. I can select like Bayshore and middle field if I wanted to, right, one or the other. And then if I hold down the control key while I do that, then I'll be able to see both Bayshore and middle field. So you can do that. And then if you just click on the one that's green, it will also take that off again. You can have state, and you can add additional filters based on this information. If I wanted to see any of them that contained Freeman as an example, that is something that I could do. But I'm going to come over here and I'm actually trying to move this a little bit more so we can see it better. You can see how you can drag and drop these around. So I'm going to, let's say that I wanted to add a column to this report. So I can come in here, I can right click and I can go to properties. And then if I wanted to just add another column, then I could add that here and then stay over here what that is actually gonna be pulling from, right? So if I had, I don't know, website, right? That's something I wanted to add. I could do that if I just click on add here. All right, let me click on properties. I can come down here into my field and I can choose, you know, any field from the customer record, right? Because this is a report that's based on our customer list. So any of those fields that are tied to a customer, we're going to see here, but we can also see some other fields that relate to other lists in our file. And so that is another benefit of using QBAR, is that you do have access to a lot more of the fields that maybe you can't get to using one of the standard reports in QuickBooks or even a modified version of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend that I want to take my customer balance, which I know is something that is on my report already. And I'm just going to go find that here. And I'm going to paste that. So it's going to give me what I want to see. So it's already saying expression okay. If I clicked OK, I could label that, but we've already got customer balance on our report. So one of the things to note, it does have a little bit of a check in here to make sure you don't have anything incorrect. If I just start typing stuff, you can see where it says bad field name and all of that stuff. If I come in here and I say customer balance, and then I, put some more stuff in here, you can see where it says garbage after expression. So I'm just going to backspace that, and then it's going to say expression okay. Now let's say that I wanted to add, I don't know, $500 to whatever's in my customer balance column. Then I'm going to click OK here. So now I can see where that's adding it to my list of columns. Now, I probably don't want that field to be called customer balance. So up here is where I can change that to, let's just say I wanted it to be modified customer balance. And then I can also decide how I want it to be displayed, so which column I want it to go in. So I'm just going to click on promote to move it up in my list, and we'll just put it right next to balance so we can see that that's going to add 500 to that number. I'm going to go ahead and say OK here, and then we can see how it took, right, whatever the value was for balance and just added $500 to it, right? Super simple. This is also where if there is some areas that we didn't want to see, right? So right click, if we didn't want to see address, then you can just click on delete here. And so, that's how you can kind of modify one of these standard canned reports. When we talk about, what we can do with this report once we have it in here. We already talked about some filtering. Over here is probably very hard to see, but there is a XL button in the top right corner of each of those little areas on my report. And I could click that and it will send whatever I'm seeing here into Excel. There's also a little print icon as well there, so you can still get to that data in Excel if you want to. Of course, we can change whatever our report title is. If we wanted to add a subtitle or something like that, we could do that as well. Some kind of best practices on when you're using QuickBooks Advanced Reporting is making sure that you have consistency in your data. So I talked a little bit about this even in some of the basic reporting in QuickBooks. You know, if we have custom field values as an example, I'm just going to switch back over to QuickBooks real quick. If I go to my customer center and I have a custom field value here, I would probably want to make that not an any text, but make it a user's multiple choice list, right? So if I wanted it to always be, you know, yellow, blue, red, and not have people allowed to save their own text, I wanted them to have to pick one of those. That'll just give you more consistency in your data. So if I was using that field data in my advanced report, I don't want to have to filter by, you know, maybe somebody spelled red or yellow incorrectly or put a space at the beginning or one after it or whatever. I don't want to have to filter for all those different variations. So having that consistency in the options is super important from the get-go, right? So kind of like making sure that your you know, data is consistent. We also just want to check and make sure that, you know, the data that we're trying to report on, right, is in fact what we're trying to get to, right? So when we grab some fields or columns and we put those into QBAR and we don't get the result we want, then we may have a filter on our report that we don't need. We may not be pulling in the right column. I will say that most of those field values, right, in that drop-down list that we looked at are pretty easily identifiable, right, as to what type of data is going to be in that field. Like customer.postal code as an example. I'm pretty sure that's going to pull from the zip code on the customer list. So you want to think about that as well. It's not as easy as when we run, you know, a company profit and loss report and we want to customize this and filter on some value here. Generally, the filter options that are going to be displayed in this list are going to match the kind of front end of QuickBooks. QBAR is definitely pulling more from the back end. So those field values that are actually shown on the back end of the database instead of from the user interface standpoint, and having those be, you know, account, name, that kind of stuff. If you are, so we have had some times where we build a QBAR report for a client and they're not getting to the data that they want or expect. So then we usually will try to kind of build that report in QuickBooks or as close as we can get to it, even if we have to export it out into Excel to try to identify, you know, where it's incorrect. Some of the things around commissions that we've seen is if we go to our item list here, we've seen where clients will have, you know, a custom field value for whatever their commission percentage is on a particular item or across a particular group of items. So if when we get to that report, we're not seeing, right, that commission calculating correctly, well, then it might be either because we're not pulling in the right field data, there's a problem in our calculation, or the value that's in those fields that we're pulling from QuickBooks is just incorrect. So it gives us the opportunity to kind of fix that in QuickBooks. And then, of course, you'd want to run that refresh, right, in QBAR. So you're seeing the latest data as well. So, you know, consistency in data, definitely some performance optimization techniques. Again, when you run it at first, it is gonna take some time. I always tell people, like, start it running, go get a cup of coffee. It might be done when you get back. But then after that, it should run much faster. But again, it does depend on the size of your company file, and how much data you're adding to that file, between the times that you sync. So that's important to note as well. So thank you so much for attending today, and I hope you have a great rest of the week.